Chapter 2 is the scariest chapter in the study because it is where you start to lay your soul bare. And these women are so brave because they've held on to this for a really long time. And it has kept them in the darkness. So, chapter 2 is the first step into the light. Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad that everybody came back this week. I know that the material that we're going to talk about is tough, to say the least. Before we dive into any of that, tell me how things have been the last couple of days. What have you experienced?
It's going to be like our session. Nobody wants to jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some sadness, a little bit of anger.
Anybody else?
Some anxiety about today.
You try to pre-plan what you're going to say, and you're not quite sure how you want to say it and how it's going to sound, and then there's the automatic assumption then that there'll be judgment, which we know
Right.
there won't be here. Chapter 2 in Surrendering the Secret is, bottom line, to have us as post-abortive women share our stories. Everyone has a different story. Everyone has a different scenario that got them to this point. So we want to know not only the women's stories, but where are they with their stories? How are they doing? Are they still carrying the burden? Have they moved on and think they're not carrying the burden, but they really are? We want to start uncovering. It's the beginning process of uncovering and surrendering.
I think women who have had abortions are definitely afraid of being exposed, some more than others. The judgment that comes along with an abortion is hard for some people to take. It's almost like if I can keep it in this box as long as I can, and I'll duct tape it, and I'll screw it closed, and I'll bury it somewhere in my yard, and that's why I'm gonna keep it, and nobody has to know. And we're never gonna dig it up because I don't want anybody to pass judgment on me. I think that's where a lot of women are, because of the stigma of an abortion.
I know that when I got home last week that I was just feeling so many feelings and just felt emotionally spent.
Yes.
And didn't really want to talk to anybody. Just kind of wanted to be with myself for a while, I guess, to process a lot, you know, what we went through. The truth is that abortion is a horrible thing. And when I say horrible, yes, it's a horrible thing in terms of what happens in the process of abortion, but the aftermath is, I think, is just as, almost as bad or as bad, because of, you're living a lie, you're living in absolute hell.
Again, it's hard material, but you know, as we read, the truth will set you free. And so as we start to tell our stories, just keep that in the back of your mind, that this is what's true. And we're gonna be covered with God's truth. And that makes all of the difference in the world. And it will change the way that you view yourself, and it will change the way that you view your experience. Because right now we're viewing it through our own eyes and our own hurt and pain, but we'll eventually be able to see it differently. And that's a good thing. And it's just that journey to get there can be hard. But that's okay, I'm glad everybody came back. That's a huge thing, that everybody came back. One of the Bible verses that really struck me is from James 5:16. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous man is powerful and effective.
I would definitely recommend this. I mean, it's an encouraging environment. It's a safe place. They bring everything back. It's Christ-centered, you know. There's no judgment. It's what a woman needs after coming out of this. So they need to release it and heal and just kind of have that safe place that they can share all the things that are coming out of it.
I think the devil's intentions are to keep you silent, to make you feel the hurt, to make you feel the shame, to make you feel like you can't forgive yourself and that God's really not going to forgive you.
Probably the two times where I have shared my story that it has been the absolute scariest for me was the first time I told my pastor, because I was in a leadership position in our church and I wanted to go take this training, and I felt like I had to tell him. And that was incredibly scary to confess that to him, because you know, the thoughts are, what is he going to think of me? Are they still going to let me lead? Are they going to take this away from me because now they're going to know who I really am and that I'm not worthy of this? And he was incredibly gracious and incredibly just showed the face of God to me in that moment, which was incredible. And his tenderness and concern for me was great. And then the second time, we were doing an Easter service and we did cardboard testimonies. And I immediately said, oh, I'll do it. And I was asked, well, what would yours say? And I said, well, let's say abortion on one side and then forgiven on the other. And as soon as I said that, I thought,
Take it back.
I'd like to have that back now. I was just kidding, and no, not
just kidding.
Not yet. No, thank you.
I won't be there that Sunday.
And the scariest time was during rehearsal, because it was in front of all of the church people. And to walk out there with a sign that was literally 2 feet by 4 feet that said abortion, I was like, just put the big scarlet A on me. And that was the most frightened I've ever been, and the most ashamed I'd ever been. And then the day of Easter Sunday, when we were getting ready to go out, my kids were also part of this. My daughter was going out in front of me, and she looked back at me and she said, Mom, I'm so proud of you. And that was just the easiest. And it was nothing to do that in front of a crowd of thousands. And it was so freeing, and that's what I want for you guys. That's what I want for anyone that does this study, is to know that absolute freedom, that you can say, this is who I was, but this is who I am, because I have been covered by the blood of Christ. And that's what I want for you, to leave this study knowing that there's no condemnation in Christ. I mean, when you're driving over here in your car and you know you're coming to this Bible study, which is the one where, you know, the book stays underneath all the other books and everything, because we don't necessarily want to walk around and go, yeah, I'm going to the abortion study. It's good, yeah. And that's what Satan wants is for us. I mean, not that, you know, not that you have to walk around going, yes, I'm going to this study, but he wants us kept in that shame and that darkness. And when we can let that go, it is so freeing.
Women are petrified and ashamed and scared that their secret will come out. I know I was. I still am, to some extent, depending on the scenario I'm in. It's not something that's easily accepted by society, and we've known cases of people who've even had friends turn from them and family turn from them. So yeah, it's a very scary secret. So walking into a Bible study about it, when you're going to throw God in the mix, can make it even more scary. Not knowing that at the end it will give you such a release and such joy and peace.
When Surrender the Secret returns, you know, they call you back. And it happens really quickly. And if you choose not to have anesthesia,
This is one of the things that they don't tell you, that it's very painful.
I just want to pray for us before we start to share our stories, okay? Dear Lord, you know all of our hearts. You know all of our stories. And God, I just ask that you fill us with your peace and your grace and your mercy as we come to this part, because this is the part where we are all vulnerable. God, just be with each of the women here. I ask this in your holy name. Amen. This is the fun part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll get us started and tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from. I got married right out of college. It was seemed like the thing to do at the time, and I was married for about 3 years. And while I thought that it was the thing to do, it really was not the thing to do. And it wasn't very happy. I wasn't very happy. And decided to look outside of my marriage to make myself happy. And actually had an affair. And this is one of those things, as I was trying to think how I was going to tell my story. How do I tell this and make it sound better than it really is? But I actually had an affair with the man that is my husband now, which is a testament to God's restorative work, and that's a whole nother story. But got pregnant, and I knew that I wanted to get divorced. I knew that I did not love the man that I was married to, and I could not get divorced if I was pregnant. It's not like that was a rule, it's not like that was a law, but in my head it was. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't go to my mom. I have there are 3 sisters, you know, I have 2 sisters, and I didn't go to either one of them. I so identify with the fear and panic because that was the mode that I was operating in. It was, oh, crap, what am I gonna do now? Made an appointment and went by myself. I told absolutely no one. I didn't know how I was gonna pay for it. I couldn't use my credit card. And, you know, was in the neighborhood of $200. But I just remember thinking, where am I can't tell my husband because I don't want him to be my husband. And I need to just take care of this. And to sit by myself. It's, you don't have anybody to talk to. You don't have anybody that you can say, you know, that to even just give you little conversation to help you through it. Thank you. And, you know, they call you back. And it happens really quickly. And if you choose not to have anesthesia, this is one of the things that they don't tell you, that it's very painful. And it's very fast. And there's no feeling. There's no humanity, or at least I didn't feel that there was. So it was quick, and they sent me out the door with 2 prescriptions and said, okay, off you go. Let us know if you have any problem. And I thought, hell will freeze over before I will come back here. And it's almost like it's a tunnel vision. Didn't see the other women that were sitting in there with me. And I certainly didn't see anybody when I was leaving, because all I could think of was, get me out of here. And God was nowhere in that picture, because I didn't want him there. And I can look back now and know that I didn't want him there.
I love that Jill went first. And I wanted to watch her, how she told her story. Because again, I had been through the study once before with her. And I was, oddly enough, I was glad to see how quickly the emotions came back. Because I was sitting there, I thought, oh, I'm gonna share my story again. Big deal, it's all good, I've done this before. The feelings and the emotions come rushing back immediately. It's just something that you're never going to totally overcome. And so it helped me to see Jill still so vulnerable, because then I knew I could be that vulnerable, because some of these women have not heard our stories before, and you never know how your story may affect someone else.
When we get back,
I love this boy so much that I was willing to sacrifice my own baby to hold on to him.
so anybody else wants to jump on in here, you just feel free at any time.
I'll tell my story. I was married and divorced and had gone back to college to finish my education because I had quit school for a couple years. And in between the time I got married and, well, anyway, ended up divorced, was back in school, met the father of my child, fell head over heels in love with him, got pregnant, not intending to, but kind of being careless in terms of protection. I was in love with him, he said he was in love with me, but got pregnant. And just the reality of the situation set in. The father of my child at that time he was a tennis professional, and he was pursuing his dream. I was afraid that if he married me because of the child, we would end up in divorce, because just all kind of reasons. So I did tell that the father was aware of the fact that I was pregnant, and he left the decision up to me. He really didn't have much to say about it. I think he was hoping that I would get an abortion. He never said, but in my heart, that's what I felt. But the hardest part of it was the process around how the abortion was done. That you would go in, the doctor inserted a DNC, and the abortion would begin. And then the next day, I would go back, and the doctor would complete the abortion. So I had to go home and wait 24 hours. Started to cramp, my body started going through all these changes. And I mean, it was just horrible having to think about what was going on. Went back the next day, and the doctor completed the abortion. And I left there numb, I'm sure, and then just like a zombie. And was in total denial to a certain degree of what I had just done. My biggest fear, what drove me to having an abortion at that time was abandonment. Because of the kind of family that I grew up in, I had a lot of issues when I was younger, and I was fearful of abandonment. And I loved this boy so much that I was willing to sacrifice my own baby to hold on to him. And because I realized later I never wanted to have an abortion, but I just convinced myself, that Satan convinced me that I was doing the right thing. But, so anyway, that's my story.
After we finished chapter 2, I went up to Jane and I called her out because I knew that she was holding back. I could tell that she's still wanting to keep part of her story a secret. And she can't do it. She can't do it. It was written all over her face, the pain that she's still in.
It's very difficult for me to share feelings, deep hurt, because I'm afraid that if I get to that one spot that makes me start to really begin to feel, I'm afraid I'm just going to open up and open the floodgates.
And Jane shared with me that she's afraid that once she goes down that road and starts to experience the emotions, that she won't be able to get it back. It comes back to holding on to things so tightly, the control so tightly, and the secret for such a long time, that when you do finally let it go and allow yourself to experience those feelings, it can be very intense.
And I want her to take this opportunity to take this group of women who love her and care about her and use this opportunity to finally break free. Surrender that secret.
When Surrender the Secret returns.
On June 21st at 5:35, I had my son into a bedpan sitting on a bed. Mine's a little different. I was 17. I was the captain of the cheerleading squad. I was on the honor roll. I was in youth group. I was the perfect daughter. And I ended up pregnant. And I told my mom, and because my sister was going to be getting married, she told me in a few months, she said that we couldn't tell my dad. It was too stressful. And I needed to decide what I wanted to do. And I told her, without a doubt, I wanted to keep it. And she didn't have much to say. A couple weeks went on, and I was still keeping it. And then I eventually had to tell my dad. My whole family was there, and I told my dad, and he just got up and hugged me. And they took me out to dinner, which was kind of odd. And the next day, my dad turned into the devil. I didn't need the devil to talk to me because he was staring me in the face every day. The things that were said to me are not things that any daughter should ever hear from her father. So that just put a big rift in my whole family. I ran away a few times. I didn't know what to do, and finally one night I was fighting with my dad, and he said, "There's only one way to go. You know what I want you to do, and if you don't, you will not any longer be welcome in our house." So I went to the doctor, and they wouldn't ever let me look at the ultrasound machine. And my mom was with me, and I thought it was because she didn't want me to have any connection. Later I found out it was totally different. I was told that there was something wrong with him and that I wouldn't be able to carry him to term, and so I was making the best choice. So on June 20th, I went to the doctor and they inserted, I don't know what it was, something to make my cervix dilate, and I went home and I slept like you, cramping, wondering what was going on. And the next day I went to the hospital, and I got wheeled into the operating room, and the doctor said, I'm gonna take some fluid out of your stomach, and then I'm gonna put some other fluid back in, and that's gonna make your baby have a heart attack. You may feel him thrash around, and that's just him passing. So they did that, and then for the next 24 hours, I was in labor without any pain medicine. I held on to the sides of the bed to the point that my hands were bruised. I screamed to the point that they sent security up to my room. And on June 21st at 5:35, I had my son into a bedpan sitting on a bed. And I remember everything in so much in detail, like the smells and the people's faces and the gown that I had on. And when he came out, he touched my leg. And the nurse asked if I wanted to see him, and I said no, but I asked my mom to look at him, and she did. And they put him into a container and carried him out of the room. I went home like 2 hours later, and it was never spoken of again in my family.
Courtney's story shook me to the core. Her story is nothing but a testament to her strength and her willpower and God's love for her, that he brought her through that, because there's just, I don't know how she did it. She's an incredible individual.
And then a couple years ago, I had to have a procedure done, and I had to get my medical records. In those medical records was the pathology report for my baby, and I found out it was a boy. There was nothing wrong with him. And instead of being only 12 weeks, I was 17 weeks. So I had been lied to by my parents. And it takes a lot to get over. But that's it. And some worst experience of my life. And I named him. And to this day, my dad still won't talk to me about it. It's under the rug, and he doesn't want to talk to me about it. My mom has ended up having a lot of emotional problems from it. Seeing him, being there with me. And I never really realized the impact it would have on her. But her having to look at him was pretty heart-wrenching for her. So now I'm here.
It makes me so mad.
They didn't tell me anything.
It's just a procedure. It's not anything. That is so much. It makes me so mad for you.
And they didn't tell me anything about him having a heart attack or anything until I'm laying there on the bed. And he's like, okay, we're just gonna do this real fast, and you're gonna feel him. And I felt him, and he moved, and that was the last of it, and it sucks.
When we get back, the loudest voice in my head I've ever heard in my life scream, no. Don't do it. But he said he loved me, and I needed somebody to love me. I was 17 going into my senior year of high school, and had a rather volatile home situation. And I met a guy, and he was a bad boy, and I knew it because I knew of him and I knew of his reputation from years before. But he was the first guy that showed me attention, and I'd had up to this point a really volatile relationship with my dad. and didn't realize how much I needed attention and was longing for it. And I dated him all through high school, and we're in my parents' basement. And he wants to have sex with me. And I know it was God. I know it was. You can never tell me other. The loudest voice in my head I've ever heard in my life scream, no. Don't do it. But he said he loved me, and I needed somebody to love me. 2 weeks after starting college as a freshman, I found out I was pregnant. I called my boyfriend, and he came down, and we had to drive 2 hours to the nearest clinic. And I went in, and I remember meeting somebody who gave me counseling. Use that term very loosely. And are you sure you want to do this? Uh-huh. Okay, sign the paper. I barely remember the procedure, but I do remember them taking me to this cot in the recuperation room. And I just remember all these cots lined up next to each other. And I laid down, and I was numb. I was lost. And there was a girl laying in the cot next to me who was just weeping. She was so broken. And I just remember reaching over and holding her hand, thinking, I gotta be there for her. I couldn't tell you what she looked like. I just remember holding her hand because it was the only person in the world I had a connection with. I knew that we could get through this together, whoever this person was. We were gonna do this together. So I took the 2-hour cab ride back as my boyfriend slept because, you know.
Had a long day.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he was exhausted. But I'm, you know, his problems were solved. We immediately broke up, and I told myself, well, again, years of counseling afterwards, I now realize that I had to find, the next person I had to be with had to be the exact opposite. I grew up in the church. I believed in saving yourself until you were married. And that was all gone now. So the only way I could redeem myself is if I started dating a guy who was the exact opposite, who went to church and was close to his family and was a good Christian. And I did that. I found the perfect guy. And we dated for a really long time. But a year after we had started dating, I woke up one morning and was nauseous. And I knew that nausea. I knew that feeling oh so well. And I lied to him and I said, my roommate's sick. You know, by now I'm a sophomore in college. And I said, my roommate's not feeling good. I'm taking her to the infirmary. He told me later, he goes, I knew that was the big fat lie. And I went to the infirmary and found out I was pregnant again. And it's only within this group that I've shared that because the first one was almost acceptable because he was a bad person and he did bad things to me. But this guy didn't. And we both made a horrible mistake that our child paid the price for. And that's the one I can't get over for some reason. I just can't let it go. So within a two-year time frame, I had 2 abortions.
There was Kelly's story. There was something about Kelly's story. You know, when you kind of go into this and you hear the post-abortive women, you automatically, for me, think one abortion. And when she came out and said that it was 2, that was surprising to me. Not in judgment of her, but you don't realize that, you don't think about, well, I only had 1, so everybody must have just had 1. But then there are women that have gone through it twice, 3, 4, 5 times. And I don't know how they're strong enough now to be able to cope with that, because I don't think I could. So I know she's a really strong lady to be able to deal with that. She not only did it once, but twice. So I admire her a lot for being able to stand up and say, hey, yeah, I did it once, but I did it twice. It takes a lot of guts, a lot of guts to do that.
And I still have a really hard time with it. Abortion in itself is such a hard pill to swallow. And then to say you had 2, I just feel there's always going to be a stigma to it. So it's still very difficult, but I did share it the first time. It was, as this study is, it opened me up, and I'm thankful for it. But I still had hesitation sharing again this time, but I knew I had to.
When Surrender the Secret returns.
And for myself, I can remember my experience so much, so it's like a really bad movie I don't want to see again.
Vanessa wasn't able to share her story fully today, which is very typical of a woman at this point in the process. It comes as trust is developed, and we will hear more and more of her story as we go through the sessions.
It was just a lot because I was taking on all what they were feeling. And I'm going to cry right now. And I hate doing that. I hate to cry. It's like, it's so much, you know. You open up some wounds, you know, and then you, just give me 1 second, please, okay?
I can understand how Vanessa struggled to share. I mean, 1 is she doesn't really know us, and 2 is an uncomfortable subject matter, and if she hadn't really thought a lot about it or talked much about it leading up to this, it would be very difficult. And look at me. I mean, I've been through the study already once, and I still struggled to share. So I totally understand where she's coming from.
You kind of, you take that journey with the ladies, like when they tell the stories, and because it's so real to them, and it is real, that you feel like you were going down that hallway into the doctor's office with them. And for myself, I can remember my experience so much, so it's like a really bad movie I don't want to see again. And I guess there's healing in that. It's just, for me right now, it feels more like opening an old wound than it is healing it. So it'll just take a little bit more time for me.
You know, the Bible tells us that He is the potter and we are the clay. And He makes these beautiful vessels. And when we take the vessels in our own 2 hands, we're not very careful. I'm not very careful. And I've dropped mine. But God comes back in and He picks up my broken pieces and your broken pieces and yours and yours and yours. And He puts them back together in this mosaic that is even more beautiful than what I started with. And that while right now, when we feel the most broken, He's putting it all back together. And it will be beautiful.
Your relationship changes once you've shared your story. You see the hurt in everybody, and you realize, wow, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one that felt shame. I'm not the only one that has regret. I'm not the only one that went through this. I think after you have an abortion, you know there are other women that have done it, but you feel alone, very alone, especially especially since you went in there with another living being inside you, and now you walk out and you're definitely alone and they're not in you anymore. And so once you share your story, it's almost like a bond that you have. That you're not alone, and I know where you're coming from and you know where I'm coming from, and you've felt this way and I've felt this way, and we can hurt together and we can grieve together, but then we can come out of this and there's light at the end of the tunnel and we can be better, and then maybe we can help somebody else. So definitely you feel different towards each other.
How ironic that having the abortion is such a traumatic event, but sharing it is as traumatic. Coming before God and saying, here I am and this is what I've done, and I know you see every piece of it. It can break you almost as much. Yet at least we know there's healing on the other side of this time around.
And there's rejoicing in heaven that we are coming together and confessing before each other and before God that this is who I am, this is what I've done, and I need your help because I cannot by any stretch do it on my own. And that's where the cord of 3, in our case the cord of 5, will be very strong in supporting each other. You know, I just want people to know that this is such a privilege for me, and I think for all of the women that are involved, for us to be able to help other women going forward. I mean, this is a gift from God for us. And you know, it's a responsibility that we all take seriously, that this is a very serious subject, and while we can laugh and joke about some things, we take it very seriously. And people need to know the truth. And I don't think that the truth is spoken much in today's media. And people need to know that it's not a simple procedure. It's a lifelong journey that you go on once you've made that decision.
Keeping your secret about abortion has you living in darkness, while surrendering the secret opens the door to light and to God's love.
For myself, I just thought of, like, you know, I've been detestable to God.
She just kept saying that it hurts so bad. This hurts so bad, to know what she'd done.
That it disturbs me to know that I'm a murderer. And it was, you know, because I can't even spank my own children.
It blows my mind that he can still love us after what?
Yeah.
He can still love me after what I did.